Hello, everyone. L.C. Holt here, and this is Rebecca Ivey. And you know us, I'm sure, if you've seen the show before. This is my update for the week of October the 21st. We're steadily moving closer to Halloween. And so, in honor of that, we've decided today to talk about one of these seminal classics of horror, 1968's Night of the Living Dead. Directed by George Romero, co-written by George Romero and a man named John Russo. And I mean, there's a lot to say about this movie. This movie came at the tail end of the 60s. It was around the time of Easy Rider, not exactly that time, but Hollywood was starting to change. This was an independently produced movie made in Pittsburgh, George Romero's hometown. He was a proud Pittsburgher. I think that's how you say it. He was a Pittsburgher. But up until this time, he was making, he had graduated from Carnegie Mellon up in Pittsburgh. And he had started a company making commercial, TV commercials, industrial films. And he actually did some segments for Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, if you can believe that. But so this company he owned was called The Latent Image. And at one point, John Russo worked there as well, and a guy named Russell Striner, who was in the movie, played Johnny. And so they decided they might want to make a feature film. And, you know, commercially, horror did well. You didn't need a lot of money for it. And so they decided to team up with another company run by a guy named Carl Hardman. And it was called Hardman Associates, Inc. And he worked there with the other lady was Marilyn Eastman. And so these two companies joined forces to make Pittsburgh's first independently produced horror movie. Actually, I don't know if it's its first, but it was certainly its most famous. And they shot it mostly around Pittsburgh. Originally, see, when these two companies merged, there were 10 people in total. So they called the joint company Image 10. And each of these people put in $600 apiece. So $6,000 they started on.
It was a lot of money back then.
It was a lot of money. It wasn't enough, though.
Yeah.
They needed 10 more people, and they put in $600 apiece. And eventually it got up to like $114,000. That's budget, which is kind of amazing it cost that much, to be honest with you, in 1968, considering the movie is, you know, kind of like a play.
Yeah.
There's one setting. Well, there's the graveyard, you know, where it begins, and then they move to the farmhouse, and it pretty much stays at the farmhouse. George and John Russo wrote this together, as I said before, but this wasn't originally the idea. Night of the Living Dead wasn't the first thing they came up with. They actually came up with, at first it was going to be a movie, a horror comedy about a teenage extraterrestrial that comes to Earth and befriends human teenagers. That sounds like a John Russo idea.
Yeah.
Because John Russo is kind of a character.
Didn't America International basically do that with Tommy Kirk and Annette Funicello?
Was this before or after 68?
I probably before.
So John Russo probably saw that
I don't know.
movie.
I'd have to double check that, but I do remember a beach movie with I think Annette Funicello was in it, but I think Tommy Kirk was the space guy, and he comes down. And
oh, really?
I think so.
Interesting. So Johnny Russo probably saw that. And thought, we need a flying saucer. Because John Russo's ideas were very, I'm not a huge John Russo fan. I think his ideas are kind of antiquated. Like every time John Russo comes up with an idea, it's like, and there was a secret government project and something escaped. A flying saucer came down and a man with antennae got out. You know, it's all very like giant ant type stuff.
Yeah.
Even in the 80s and 90s. And so I think George had a lot to do ultimately with the final draft of this script. Though I will say this for John Russo, he came up with the idea of flesh eaters, not zombies. They never referred to them as zombies, not at first, because at this time in horror, you know, it was
zombies were,
yeah, like the voodoo.
Yeah, the control and
like Haitian type movies where, you know, the zombies come out and they're just treated people, or they're people who've been risen with the power of voodoo.
Yeah,
Voodoo, you do voodoo.
Yeah, I thought I'm trying to remember things here,
Yeah.
but I think there was a Bob Hope movie called Ghost Breakers, and I think they mentioned zombies or something in that. It was the old Hollywood.
Right, the voodoo zombies.
Yeah, if I remember correctly.
Right.
I haven't seen that movie since I was probably 10.
Was it called Island of the Zombies?
No, it was Ghost Breakers.
Oh, Ghost Breakers.
I think. Yeah.
Zombie Breakers.
Mm-hmm.
And
comedy.
So George, he was like, so that's what they referred to them as flesh eaters. In fact, the original title of this movie was Night of the Flesh Eaters. That was the one they were going to go to print with. But that was changed, and that's a story we'll get to eventually as we're talking about this. But George thought of them as ghouls. Mm-hmm. They eat flesh, they're ghouls. Mm-hmm. And later, this became zombie. When people said, well, they're kind of like zombies, right? But he never used the word zombie. And even in the future films, he kind of avoided characters using the word zombie, except for Dawn of the Dead, where you have, the guy, and he's talking about his grandfather was Macumba, was a priest on the islands and everything. And he refers to it. Ken Foree's character refers to them at one point as zombies. But it makes sense because he's actually talking about he's from that tradition. So he's using the word. Usually George kind of refrained from calling them zombies. They were just creatures. Because, George had an affinity for the zombie.
Yeah, you can tell that.
Yeah.
I mean, particularly the later films.
Because he kind of said from time to time, that the zombies just do what they do. Yeah. It's the people that have the problems. Yeah. And this, I think we can talk about this in this film because you and I have discussed this privately, about this. I wanted to actually open this up a little bit and let's actually discuss this movie. And we're also going to get into the remake, which I think both you and I we can go ahead and give the spoiler that we like it. But the 1968 one, it starts with Barbara and her brother Johnny arriving at the cemetery. And they get out and they're visiting their mother's grave. And they see this guy off in the distance walking around, Mm-hmm. And he just seems like he's a guy going to the cemetery. Well, he eventually comes over and she tries to walk past them. And as she says later, she, says, good day, which she doesn't say in the scene. Yeah. When she's telling the story later, she's like, I just walked past him and said, good day, which she didn't say. She's lying. Liar. But that scene has the infamous, they're coming to get you, Barbara. Yes. Which everyone quotes, including me just now.
And then when she's retelling it, the infamous,
Yes. Well, this is Judith O'Dea is the actress, and she's still around. She played Barbara in the original. She tells the story that the script was kind of loose. She says that a lot of the dialogue was ad-libbed. I don't know what I think about that because there's some dialogue in this that's really written. Yeah. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, but I mean, even George said that some of the dialogue was cringy. Yeah. But the scene you're talking about is later on because she runs away from this. The zombie tries to attack her. She hightails it. She loses her shoes. She falls down.
Shoes, Cinderella.
She tries to get it. She tries to get in the car. She doesn't have the keys. Because Johnny had the keys. And so she releases the parking brake and just rolls away into a tree. And, the story is that the rolling into a tree, there was an accident on set. And the side of the car got smashed a little bit. And so they decided to work it into the story where she hits the parking brake. And, you might as well use it, right? You don't have a lot of money. Yeah. So when it rolls in it, I think that wasn't originally supposed to roll away. I guess she just was supposed to get out of it and run. Okay. But she eventually runs to a farmhouse and gets in there and, and for a minute she's all alone. She goes up the stairs and she finds that face of that skeleton, which is a little bit of a goof because there's no bullet hole in the head. Yeah. So there was no brain injury there. So unless it's maybe we're just not seeing it or it got bashed in the head. Yeah. There's also another kind of goof there because later in the movie when Ben wants to move it into another room, it's laying on a carpet and he takes the corpse and pulls it away. And as he pulls it away, as it passes the camera, if you look, you can see it's an intact face. But in close-up, it's just the skull. Mm-hmm. So, there are kind of things like that. But this guy I'm talking about, Ben, shows up in his truck. And Barbara's like, who are you? That's the thing about Barbara. We've talked about it in this original.
She's very just morose. Is that the word? Is that a good word?
Kind of catatonic.
She just sits there. She does nothing until the end.
She's totally traumatized the whole time.
Except for when she talks about her PTSD with her incident with the corpse and her brother.
Yeah.
And she's like, he ripped at me. He ripped at me.
Well, that's the thing about the with Ben. He goes through this whole story where he's over at the diner and, and the truck was like a moving bonfire. And he tells this whole story about it.
And everyone's supposed to be interested in his story.
Right. And she's listening.
Exactly. And then it's her turn to tell her story. And he's just like, shut up.
He does. He says, you just need to calm down. And she, and she's over there talking about, and he grabbed me. And she lies about the good day. And then he grabbed me. And he ripped at my clothes and all this.
Hashtag zombie Me Too moment.
That's right. And he's over there telling her, just be quiet. I told my story. You just sit there and be quiet, lady. And then the worst part of it is when she stands up and demands they go out and get Johnny. He says, your brother is dead. And he punches her. He punches her in the face.
He does.
He does not slap her. No.
Yeah.
He punches Barbara in the face, and she falls like a lead weight. He catches her. He didn't let her head hit the floor, thankfully. I'm surprised. And he throws her like a mannequin over onto the couch and goes about his duties of boarding up the house.
We were talking about how it just seemed like no one, I don't know, maybe I think that's the point, George's point, obviously siding with the corpses over here.
Yeah. But do you think he was yet?
I don't know yet, but but the people just, there's no one in the original that you're like, that's like, you go, I like this person. They're likable aspects, I guess, but overall when I saw it, I watched it as a kid, but I watched it recently and I just thought, everyone in this is kind of a jerk. Mm-hmm. Probably the only one that's probably not a jerk and she's passed out. We don't really know what her personality is the kid.
Oh, you're talking about Karen, the little
Karen,
baby downstairs?
Yeah.
No, not the baby, but the
little
young
girl.
Yeah.
Maybe the mother?
The mother, I think, has a reasonable thing because she's kind of in this version, she's more of the mediator.
Yeah,
because she's trying to negotiate from upstairs and downstairs because her husband's being a hard ass. For those of you who don't know, there were people in the basement. Mm-hmm. Why don't you know this? You've seen this movie.
You can watch it anywhere. It's public domain.
Yeah, God knows that. That cursed George for the rest of his life. There wasn't actually a basement in that house. The basement was shot elsewhere. They cut a hole in the wall because this house was going to be demolished.
Okay, I was going to say, I'm
sure they didn't have
owner was not.
They didn't have running water.
Oh, so that had to suck. What about pee potty time?
You just went in the bushes, and when they needed to wash up or something, they went out to the stream that was out back. Can you imagine because they used Bosco?
I'm sorry,
chocolate syrup.
I need a working toilet.
Well, they used Bosco chocolate syrup for the blood. Can you imagine having that sticky shit on you?
Yeah.
The Caro is bad enough, but then you don't have running water, so you have to go in a stream to try and get that crap off of you.
Yeah.
It's a black and white movie, so they just use chocolate syrup. Looked pretty good. It's black and white. Why go through the expense? Just go to the grocery store and get some Bosco.
Except when they colorized it, I guess they had to.
Yeah, in the colorized version, is it red?
I don't know, and I just saw it. I wasn't paying attention.
That's interesting. I'm sure they probably tinted it or something red, right? They didn't leave it black.
No.
If it's colorized.
I'm sure they didn't. But I do remember watching the colorized version, and I remember a lot of scenes. Even though it's colorized, like at the end where the fires are getting the burn. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just didn't. It didn't look that.
It didn't look real?
No, it just didn't look very good. Of course, when you colorize movies, they usually don't look very good. But.
Well, let's go through some of these characters before we get too far into the story. Okay, so there's Ben. Well, there's Barbara. Barbara gets away from the cemetery, and as you said, she's catatonic. Ben shows up in his truck after the moving bonfire, and he shows up, and he's kind of this take charge guy. He was written as a truck driver type guy. Mm-hmm. And there are a couple different stories about this. George Romero said that when they cast an African-American actor, which is quite interesting here because this is 1968 and that is not well known. It's not a popular thing to do necessarily. I mean, prior to this, in big movies, you had people like Sidney Poitier, but you did not have a horror movie that had an African-American lead until Dwayne Jones was cast as Ben in this movie. George says they didn't change anything. They just played it like, sort of like the race wasn't important. It was the best actor they knew happened to be African-American. So naturally, he gets the leading role. Carl Hardman tells a slightly different story. He said that the character was written more as a kind of a, I don't want to say dumb, but a simple man, not necessarily coming across as intelligently as Dwayne Jones's Ben was. And that Dwayne Jones ad-libbed and made the character his own and portrayed it that way. And then you got Judith O'Dea saying that there was practically no script. So I don't know where all these people are getting these drastically different stories.
They were on different sets.
I guess so. They were all.
What did Dwayne Jones say about it, or did he ever?
He never said that I'm aware of. But
if anyone knows, let us. Yeah,
because Dwayne was one of the first to pass away, sadly, amongst the original cast. But he was great in the movie.
He was really good.
But let's talk about the character of Ben. Now that we've talked a bit about the casting, the character of Ben is a take charge guy, and he seems to be, in essence, in this version, he is the lead.
Yes.
And then, as more people reveal themselves, having been in the house, in the basement, hearing Barbara scream and struggle, and not coming up to help, there's Harry Cooper, who is a guy, whose car was turned over. With his wife and his daughter, Karen. His wife is Helen. The daughter got bit on the arm during the time that these zombies were turning over the car. And then also down there is Tom, who is, in this version, a neighbor who just knew that the house was here, that this house was there. And then Judy, who was his girlfriend, and they're teenagers. Now, Tom, let me just start with him. Tom has very little to do in this movie.
Yeah.
Tom is not a great character.
He's kind of like that all-American Golly G. His dialogue is very, if the beaver were, going to be in this movie.
If the zombie apocalypse happened on Leave It to Beaver, this would be the Beav's. I think this would be the Beav's brother, though.
The Beav's brother?
Yeah, I don't think it would be the Beav. I think Beav would be a little more, aggressive. Tom is a stick in the mud. Really,
he is. He really is.
And Judy is, and they have this scene, where they're sitting, and just before they go out, because ultimately what they decide to do is go to the gas pump to fill up Ben's truck because it's running on fumes.
Although Mr. Cooper says don't do it.
Yeah, Mr. Cooper has an idea, and that I think is the central conflict of this. But let's go through the characters before we get to the conflict. Judy is Tom's girlfriend. She's kind of, the female characters in the original Night kind of got the short end of the stick, other than Helen. Yeah. I think Helen was a character.
Yes.
Harry's wife.
Yes.
Because she does try to negotiate.
She does. And she comes off like she really has, obviously it's her child, so she's got this vested interest in. She
kind of comes off as a person.
Yes.
Certainly of the female characters, she, I think, is the most. And I would say of the males, because Tom really doesn't have, he's not really that bright, seems like, and
it's gonna be Ben
and Ben and Harry Cooper, because and Harry Cooper is kind of a jackass, or he comes across very forcefully.
Yes.
And him and Ben being two type A type guys, two people aspiring to be alpha males, though I think Ben does quite a better job at it. But Harry's trying. They clash over a very simple debate, which George has later said in interviews that that's the point of the story, is that the whole situation is very simply resolved. If you could get past the issues that are really kind of minor that you you don't want to back down.
So what's the easy resolution? Okay, if you want to come with us, go. If you don't, stay in the basement.
Well, let's give the two sides. Ben's point of view is, let's stay up here, because there are a lot of windows and stuff, but we have weapons, we can board it up, and there's a radio.
But you're boarding up your windows.
And a television, actually, eventually. You are boarding up the windows. So, but in Harry's point of view is, we reinforce the door from the inside of the basement. If we all go down there, blockade the door, and wait for help to come, we'll be safe.
Why didn't they just board up everything upstairs and go downstairs?
Well, that's one possible solution. You could have done that. It's interesting because the idea is, who's right?
I mean, both have valid points. Do you want to be, you could take the cat perspective. Mm-hmm. Cats don't like to be where there's, like their little houses. They tend to like to go in and be able to have another escape path. They don't like to be boxed in.
Yes.
One escape, because then once you're screwed.
Yes.
But at the same time, more entrances and exits mean more opportunities for zombies to break in and eat you.
Right. Yeah. And Ben's point of view is, I don't want to box myself in.
Yeah.
If that door gives way, we have no way out.
Yeah.
And Cooper says, the door is strong. We reinforced it with boards. He says, to stay up here would be crazy. We can take everything we need down there. And I don't know, probably the radio reception wouldn't be super great. Or the TV. But you could take it down there. I don't know if I'd take the radio. That thing is huge. Yeah. You could take the TV down there.
I don't know. TVs were pretty.
Yeah, but they have one of those like a smaller one, remember? Because they put the two chairs together.
They're still pretty damn heavy.
They were pretty heavy. But I think those three boys could lug it down there.
That's true. That's true.
The radio, I think, would be a more of a moving effort.
I would say keep a lookout upstairs and switch out lookouts every so often. And that person would keep an update on that. But then again, as we could tell, people like Tom, you don't want him because, his trouser pant might get caught and then he would get eaten.
Or Judy.
Yeah.
Because Judy is the real problem when it comes to...
she's useless right
now. But that's the basic conflict. Who is right? Is Cooper right or is Ben right? And neither of them are going to back down. And all these other people are trapped in the middle. And this crazy girl sitting over there counting the fucking stitches in the doily. Damn you, Barbara. You're useless.
They should have threw her outside and made a run for it.
Yeah, throw her out the back and make a run out the front.
Like when they were trying to get the gas. Because that was I know you're getting to that.
No, that's it. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, when they're like, oh, we'll go gas up the truck and we'll drive and we'll hightail it for help. That's what I would have done. Just been like, let's kick her out the back of the truck bed, and the zombies are eating her while we're gassing up, and then
just take off. That would have been an even bleaker ending.
Yeah, that would have been great. Actually, I like that ending. Can we change it? They just push her out, gas up. Then there's no like franticness and spilling the gasoline everywhere.
They did change it, but we didn't do it. They changed it later, but we'll get to that.
Yes, they did.
So they jump out in this thing. They're like, okay. Cooper, throw these Molotov cocktails out the window. And I would have been telling him, make sure you miss the roof, because he throws them really close to the house. Every time I see that, I go, dude, you got to get a better throwing arm if you're going to be throwing Molotov cocktails. And I think a couple of those shots are recycled too. Every time there's one shot in particular, I'm like, I think we just saw that shot, but that's okay. But anyway, so the idea is that Ben and Tom are going to go out to the truck, get the gasoline, come back, get everybody else, load them up, get out of there. Cooper's going to throw the Molotov cocktails, and then what's her face? Helen is going to take fucking knot on a log downstairs and wait down there and board up the door in case anything happens.
Can I just so Tom's girlfriend at this point, Judy, that's her name, Judy, useless Judy. Mm-hmm. She's like, well, I'm gonna go, as they're loading up. The worst time to change your mind. And she goes running out there, and of course, he says, I'm going with him. And she goes out there, and then they lock the door behind her.
Cooper does. Yeah, because he has to run back downstairs and lock the door. And when she goes out the door, he's like, fuck you, lady, and locks it.
Because she says she's going. So he's like, fine, I'm locking the door. But they kind of make it like he's being a coward about it. But she's standing there like going, I'm going. And then she stops, and she's like, am I going? Am I not going? Girl, make up your mind. There are zombies about to eat y'all. Yeah. And you're trying to make up your mind and just, I don't blame him for locking that door. She was an idiot. He was like, survival of the fittest. We don't need any more stupid people.
Tom and Judy both are not that bright. But yeah, they kind of belong together.
They do.
And they end up together in more ways than one. Yes. Because they get in this damn truck eventually.
My sleeve's cut.
My jacket's gone. And then, which is a great dub line.
Well, I don't understand.
But let's explain how we got there, though.
Well, okay.
because they got down to the gas pump, and then Tom is possibly the worst gas jockey of all time.
He's just hosing the whole place down with gasoline.
And there's
while
a torch.
Ben's got a torch. But before they get to that, they're like, "Oh, the key doesn't work," so they shoot the lock.
No, that's not. Oh yeah, no, you're right.
Yes.
You're right. Yeah.
And I'm like, that's what? That does not seem safe, but it worked.
It does work.
It worked. They survived that.
In this version,
they did not explode.
Right.
But still, he's like, oh, and he's like hosing the whole place down with gasoline like an idiot with torches.
And he
everywhere.
catches the tire well on fire.
He does.
And his idea is we got to drive away from the pumps in a flaming truck. And Ben grabs like a carpet out of the back of the truck and starts patting. He's putting the fire out.
That's what I don't understand. And she's just sitting in the truck while it's on fire. And then she's like, oh, wait a minute, my jacket's caught. What is wrong with you? And first of all, if you hadn't have been like, I have to go, and then be like, oh, I don't know if I'm going, and then get in anyway, you're the reason why that whole thing failed. Although he was stupid for spraying it and then thinking, oh, I've got a great idea. Let's drive the truck. Why are you trying to save the truck?
Well, that's the funny thing, though. He drives the truck away for a minute, and then he's like, oh, we need to get out of here. And he stops, and that's when her jacket's caught.
I'm like, if you had just simply been like, okay, this sucker's on fire, let's run.
Yeah.
They'd have lived. And Miss Jacket over there with her accessory.
And they got blown up because the whole truck explodes at that point.
They deserve to die. I'm sorry.
And then they get eaten.
That's called survival of the fittest. That's called nature picking you off because you're a moron.
And Ben's stuck.
He is.
Because of these idiots, Ben's stuck out there by the gas pump. And he has to run back through the zombies.
And I'm sure he's looking over going, I wonder what he was thinking. Like, he's over there dapping. He's like, what are those idiots doing?
Well, you know, when it explodes and it has that flash of light on his face from the explosion, he does seem to have a look in his eyes like, oh, my God, are they really that stupid?
Yeah.
Who did I get stuck in this fucking house with?
Yep, I got catatonic Kathy over here and the two Dudley Do-Rights.
And now I got to run back and hope this asshole lets me in the door, which Cooper doesn't do at first.
Yes.
Ben has to kick the door open.
And then he beats him.
And he gives him a look like, you son of a bitch. And then he beats him. Yeah, he beats the shit out of him, which is well-deserved.
He did deserve it.
And Cooper has a visible panty line when he's getting his ass kicked, too. I always notice that. Cooper has some BBDs on. And so then, but that's not where it ends in this version because they just hang out in the house for a while longer and watch some more TV.
Well, in his defense, it is a zombiegeddon going on. You know, he didn't have time to coordinate his slacks to his undies.
Right.
He probably was caught with his pants off, and it's like, oh, we've got to rush.
And then next thing you know, these zombies are attacking and turning over his car, biting his daughter, and now he's like stuck in his farmhouse, going, "Oh my God, I wore my BVDs."
I really wonder, do you think he was an asshole before the car was turned over?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he was born asshole.
Or do you think, okay, this whole situation, I'm pissed?
Well, you know, and there is that hint of a troubled marriage there, too.
Yes, there is.
Because they are not happy.
I know I'm switching gears. Do you think that's, well, I don't know. I was going to say Carol and her husband and their daughter from Walking Dead. Do you think they drew inspiration from that?
It could be. Yeah, well, that's a good point, actually. I never thought of that, but you might have something there, yeah.
The troubled marriage, although Carol's husband was an abuser.
Yeah, and we don't know that Cooper is. I don't want to slander Coop, but
hanging with Mr. Coop.
I would not be surprised if Coop was abusive physically. But Helen might take him out at the knees because I don't know. She's pretty tough in this, which is ironic because in the remake she is not very tough. Helen is not, but in the original one,
better in the original.
Yeah, I agree. And when we get into the remake, the Savini one, we'll talk about the differences in the characters and stuff. But this movie, after that, the lights go out, and there's kind of a neat scene where the zombies have gotten brave. All the little bonfires they started, they set a chair on fire at one point. All that stuff has died out. All the fires have gone out. Because in this film, the zombies seem to be afraid of fire, which is not really, that's not followed through so much in the future ones. But in this one, they seem to be afraid of fire. And when all the fires go out, they start to go for the house, and the lights are out. And there is a cool scene with Barbara, and I like the way it's shot and the way it's directed and the way it's acted, actually, where, Ben's trying to keep them from busting through the door, and Barbara, Ben has to shoot Cooper, because Cooper tries to take the gun and get him downstairs, and then Ben kind of roughs him up again because Cooper's not a very good fighter.
Yeah.
And he takes the rifle and he shoots Cooper's. And there's this neat little scene where you see it basically from Barbara's point of view. And I've always kind of taken it that this girl is kind of coming around now, and she's seeing the madness around her is kind of how it's directed. Because you see her looking over here, and this guy is falling down the stairs after being shot. And you look over here, and there are zombies coming through, and you look over here, and Ben's getting attacked at the door trying to keep him out. And so for one moment, she decides to get up off of that damn couch. And she goes over and tries to help Ben, but is distracted when the zombie brother comes through the door.
Yeah.
And then that is her downfall, and they take her outside and eat her. Sorry, Barbara, you got eaten. But don't feel bad. You're not the only one. And your reincarnation will be a lot more take charge.
That's true.
But then, and then that's when old Ben goes downstairs. Helen's already been murdered by her zombie daughter, who uses a weapon.
Mm-hmm. She does.
We don't see that too much later. No. Not until you get into where they start getting smarter.
Day of the Dead.
Yeah, and Diary especially.
Yeah.
Where they start picking up weapons. Not Diary, Land. Yeah. Where they start picking up weapons. I got my Of the Deads confused there. My ellipses of the Deads, because there were several of them, 7 actually altogether. But yeah, so that's how it ends. And then Ben goes downstairs, finds Cooper. Dead from the gunshot wound. Cooper comes back alive because his daughter was eating his arm, chowing down on his arm, so he's got like a stump left. And then, Ben shoots him several times. Ben does a little zombie overkill on Coop.
He's I think he enjoyed it a little too much.
Yeah, because he put quite a few, especially considering he doesn't know that door is going to hold.
I know, just one will do you.
He wastes several bullets. But hey, guess what? Irony. Cooper was right. The door held. Had they all gone downstairs, they would have all survived. So in this situation, the asshole was correct.
He was correct, but how long would they have had to been down there, and how much supplies would they have had?
Well, that's good because you don't know that the rednecks
they don't
are coming.
know this.
The rednecks are coming.
So they could be stuck down there for weeks. What if the house is full of zombies for a while because the zombies know they're downstairs
and the zombies are banging on that damn door.
Yeah,
because they saw Ben go down there.
Yeah, and they're like, Mill is downstairs, so we're not going anywhere. So they're stuck. Mm-hmm. What do you do about provisions after a while?
I don't know, but if they had locked themselves in there,
they would have been.
They would have been all. They would have all survived, even the dumb ones.
Yes.
Because you just keep them in a box, But yeah, and so the next morning, the zombies seem to have kind of spread out, and I guess they figured out they couldn't get in the basement because I think that also was part of Cooper's thing. He says it, I believe, in the remake, where if they can't get in, maybe they'll just go away. I think it's him that says that, but don't quote me. But they do go away and spread out. Ben comes out the next morning, sees the house in a wreck, and then the rednecks have come from the local Evans City, and they're shooting zombies. So it kind of gives you the impression this is under control, which we find out in the sequels. It's definitely not under control. It may be in this area, but not altogether. Ben goes to the window, and he's got his rifle, and he hears voices, and he gets shot. Ben gets shot through the head, through the window, by nameless redneck characters. Actually, I don't think one of them is not nameless. The sheriff isn't. And a lot of people at the time thought this was an allegory for the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. Actually, George Romero heard on the radio the assassination of Dr. King when he was driving into the city, into New York, I believe, to try and sell the movie. So the movie was finished by the time Dr. King was murdered. So it just one of those things that happened. That may have been a bit of allegory that was not intended. But, it's kind of, when you think of the social climate at the time and what was going on with, insane racism, and then you see, these redneck guys shoot this man who happens to be African-American without saying, hey, are you alive?
Is anyone in there?
Yeah, it's not a subtle point, but it's kind of a powerful one.
Yeah.
And you've spent this whole time with Ben, and you've seen Ben go through hell and try and protect this woman that rattles on. He had to slap her one time, but that's okay.
He punched her.
He did punch her. That's true.
According to you.
And he punched her right in the face. That was close-fisted punch. But that aside,
He had a stressful day.
He tried to protect her.
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to get at. He tried his best to protect that catatonic knot on a log.
Yes.
And she died, but she was being assertive, and she just came out on the wrong end of that. So you took this whole journey with Ben, is what I was trying to say, and at the end, the journey ends with a gunshot wound to the head, and he's thrown on the pyre with all the rest of the zombies, including the cemetery zombie from the opening scene, and he's burned. And the end, well, it's not really the end, but it says the end on screen. So that was the original 1968 version.
Not a upper at all.
No, definitely not an upper. Actually, when they tried to get distribution, speaking of George driving into town, they tried to get distribution. Columbia and AIP, two very well-known distributors, were interested in the movie on the condition that they soften the violent scenes. You can't show zombies eating people like that. And there are a lot of headshots of gunfire and stuff like that. And there's nudity in the movie. If they soften that, and if they change the ending so that it wasn't a downer, then they would be interested in distributing it. And George said no. I'm sure he turned down some big checks, but he stuck to his guns artistically and said no. The Walter Reed organization eventually took on the film and released it in a kind of a crazy way. Saturday afternoon matinees. So
Come on, kids.
These kids were going to the double feature, and Roger Ebert tells the story about this because he went to see it in one of these matinees when it first came out. And he said the children didn't know what hit them. Like, they were sitting there just traumatized by the end of the movie. He said there was a little girl in the seat across from him crying, tears running down her cheeks. It was a little intense for the children at the matinee, I think, And at this time, this was a month before the MPAA began putting ratings on movies.
Okay.
Right under the gun. So there was nobody really to tell you, like, this movie's got some butt in it, and it's got some zombies eating flesh, and then at the end, this poor guy
everyone's dead.
Everybody's dead. He gets shot and burned, and and as cheesy as certain elements look now, you have to also think about this was the first time you saw this was the first zombie movie in the way that we know zombies. It set up all the rules that they still use to this day. To kill them, you got to shoot them in the head or take out their brain. They eat flesh. Doesn't matter if you're bitten or not. If you die, you come back to life. There is a lot of talk in this, which George did not like, ultimately, of a Venus probe that exploded. Yeah. He didn't like the explanation.
Because there's like the footage of Washington, the reporters. And
they always kind of say in like the TV guide, the living dead come back to life after a Venus probe explodes. And George's idea is it should just be mysterious. You don't know why this is happening. It's just happening. And he kept that in the subsequent films that he had control over. But if you look at The Walking Dead, I mean, it's essentially, those are Romero zombies. I mean, they are Romero zombies.
Except they eat animals.
Yes, they do eat animals, which, I don't know. In this one, she eats, one of the zombies eats an insect off the tree, remember?
Oh, yeah.
So, but the zombie rules were kind of, they were still being formed at this time. Like in this, they're afraid of fire. Mm-hmm. And they don't really appear to be afraid of fire too much. Well, in Dawn, they sort of are.
And Day of Dead, they had the dog, remember? Mm-hmm. The dog could get past.
And
was it Day?
Oh, that was the Dawn remake.
A Dawn remake.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. In the Dawn remake, they didn't eat the dog. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's true. I didn't really think about that. I know that one they ran too, which George did not like that.
I didn't like it either. Yeah. You're a corpse. You shouldn't be coordinated.
That's what he said. They're dead. They're you shuffle around.
And I also heard he wasn't a big Was he a big fan of Walking Dead? I heard he just thought it was just a soap opera. He wasn't very thrilled with it.
The thing with George, and I can kind of understand this, is he started this thing and then people tried to like kind of claim it. Yeah. And, you know, if you look at these like Walking Dead and a lot, like practically every zombie movie that came after, it all owes to Night of the Living Dead, the original. Because that's where this came from. Before, as we said, they were the voodoo zombies, the Haitian type voodoo zombies that were not these flesh-eating things that you shoot in the head to kill them and all that. That was all George.
But he did like Sean.
Yes, he loved Shaun of the Dead, and so do I.
Yes.
But let's start talking now about the 1990 remake, because I don't want to do a Night of the Living Dead show without talking about the remake, because I am hugely fond of that movie. And I'll tell you a story. I saw the remake first. I rented it on VHS not long after it came out, and I watched it and was blown away by it. And then I saw the original. So I started in my head with the Tom Savini one. Mm-hmm. So it has a special place in my heart. George wrote the script, and he wanted to improve elements that he thought were lackluster in the original. Like, he did not like how weak he made Barbara. And he was very adamant about this. So he went the opposite.
I have to agree with him.
I agree as well. Barbara is a much better kid. Actually,
she has an arc in this one. She's just, I mean, I guess when she comes out of her little, her little thing in the
because at the very beginning of this movie, she's sort of like that Barbara.
Yeah, but I mean, in the original, I guess when she kind of comes to when she's helping, you know, at the window, I guess that's her arc. But this one, it just really. She
really goes somewhere.
She has a journey.
Yes, yes.
Whereas the other one, she just sits on the couch.
And you're with her. She is kind of the main character in the remake.
I mean, and it kind of makes sense a little more because you start with her because when I saw the original one, I was a little confused that you start off with her and you think, oh, this is going to be her thing, and then it switches, which I know movies do that, but I guess when I saw it as a kid, I thought it was going to be about her a little bit more than what it ended up being. I think
it's, and you know, coming to think of it now, I think the 68 version can be called like Ben's story.
Yes.
And then the 1990 version is sort of Barbara's story.
Yeah.
You know, because Ben is still a very good character.
He is.
Played by Tony Todd.
He is.
And who had a lot of big shoes to fill after
did.
Dwayne Jones.
He did.
Made the character his own. And Patricia Tallman plays Barbara, who was a stunt woman prior to this. This was her first leading film role. And, you know, I think a lot of the characters in the 90 version are better. Tom is a much, much better character. The whole backstory that it was his uncle's house.
Yeah.
And you understand what the body is upstairs, you know, it makes sense. There's actually two in the house this time. There's one that's already shot himself in the head who was attacked by Uncle Rage. And then there's big old Uncle Rage, and he comes falling down. I just like that whole backstory of the house. And it's, you know, you understand why Tom is there. It's because it's his uncle's house. Yeah. And then Cooper came to the door. All of that is fleshed out in a way that I think really works. And I like the performance of William Butler, who played Tom in this. And, you know, Judy is Judy is still not too bright. But I believe her as being, you know, a teenage girl.
A teen twit
of that time. Yes. Right down to her kinky bleached hair.
Yes.
She looked like a teenage girl from the early 90s, late 80s. Helen, I don't think is the one character I don't think is an improvement. I think the wife is not as good a character.
Yeah.
And it's not really the actor.
No, I enjoyed the original.
Mm-hmm. And Harry Cooper, played by the late, great Tom Tolles. I was in my first horror movie I ever did. Homesick had Tom Tolles in it. And he was a great actor. And he plays Mr. Cooper very, very well. Back when Tommy had hair. Just a little bit, but more than he had near the end. But yeah, I loved him as Cooper, and I thought him and Tony Todd going toe to toe is really good because you got these two really big, powerful, like boisterous guys. going at each other. So all in all, I really liked all of the characters better.
Except for Mrs. Cooper.
Except for Mrs. Cooper. The daughter's name is changed to Sarah.
Yes.
And I always kind of wondered, was that a reference to Day of the Dead? Because the female lead, the kick-ass lead in that was named Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
It could have just been that George preferred that name to Karen. I don't know. Tom Savini, who directed, as I said, this remake, has called it the worst nightmare of his life, making this movie. And, you know, I can kind of see why. They had a $4 million budget. And this was a production of 21st century entertainment, not to be confused with 20th Century Fox.
Which we were talking about 21st century was...
It was owned by a man named Menachem Golan, who was half of Cannon Films. And Menachem had already broken up with his Cannon film partner, Mr. Yoram Globus, and now he was branching out and remaking his own stuff. And this one
is actually good.
This is good.
Unlike a lot of the Cannon stuff.
Well, I heard that some of the producers might have pocketed some of that $4 million. I don't think Tom had $4 million to make the movie. I think that was part of the problem.
Well, I was talking about the end product.
Yes, but I think Tom had a lot of like ideas. He had some Savini ideas. Like he wanted a lot of scenes to be a little more expanded. It wasn't his vision. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the day, you know, Tom is the gore meister, right?
Yeah.
He's like the guy. He's the master of that stuff. Or at least at that time he was definitely. And but you know, he was branching off into the horror filmmaking world as a director. And hey, what's up, buddy? I just saw someone say hey to us. Say hey.
Hi.
That's you got to keep your eye on the chat.
Yes.
I try to do that.
Yes.
But anyway, like I was saying, you know, Tom didn't get what he wanted in terms of everything. He wanted to have like really like head explosions when the shotgun goes off. He wanted more headshots. And basically when they put in for the MPAA rating on this movie, the MPAA said you can't have any of that, and they didn't fight it. I don't know if it was a release date thing, but there are some clips where you can see, I guess maybe taken from a VHS screener of it, where you can see some of this more gruesome stuff that Tom was trying to put in there. And, you know, it's pretty intense. But I think maybe if they had fought for that a little bit more, you might have been able to get some of that in there.
Yeah.
But Tom was, I think he was even locked out of the editing room. Like, he finished the movie and they were like, okay, you're done now. We'll finish this for you. The score, which I kind of like, it's a weird score.
It is.
The remake score. But I think it kind of fits. Mm-hmm. Maybe it wasn't what Tom wanted. He didn't like it.
Yeah.
But I don't hate it. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. I don't know. What do you think? You're the musician here.
It didn't bother me when I saw it.
Really? Yeah. And I kind of like that kind of little.
But then again, I don't know what
the little guitar.
Tommy would want it.
The guitar thing at the end when the credits are rolling.
Yeah.
I kind of dig that. That's got a good little riff to it. But yeah, like, I think Tom had these ideas about he wanted to have themed zombies. Like one was going to look like Bela Lugosi, and one was going to look like Lon Chaney, and one was going to look like this and this. You know, I don't know if that would have worked to just have Bela Lugosi walk through the scene.
Yeah.
But, you know, he wanted to do that, and they were like, no, Tom, we're not doing that. And there are a couple things in the movie that I wonder if Tom didn't like because they didn't really work effects-wise. And I'll tell you the one that always pops out to me. When Barbara first, you know, grabs that fireplace poker and starts beating Reed in the head, she is definitely beating a foam rubber head. It even sounds like she's hitting a foam rubber head. And that always takes me out for just a minute.
Yeah.
And I wonder, like, Tom couldn't have liked that. I mean, I've never asked him personally, but I can imagine as an effects guy.
Add sound to it later?
Right, because it has that kind of hollow sound of like a, you know, it sounds like she's hitting a foam rubber head. Doesn't sound very good. If you had just done the sound maybe a little bit on that, like you said, did some Foley to make it sound a little more fleshy, put in some skull cracks or something, then I think that might have worked better. But I gotta say that the look of the zombies in the remake, beautiful. Love them. they look like dead people. You know what I mean? And I saw that too. It's
Yes.
just, that's one way to get ahead in life. But that's true. That's true. But yeah, but like I say, that was the first time you really get to see Barbara beating somebody with something. She's coming alive. That's where you know she's not catatonic this
She's
time.
not gonna sit there staring at the doilies.
That's right. She is not comatose, and I love it.
She will strangle you with that doily.
She finds some. You remember she finds some camo pants to complete the transformation.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
And luckily they fit her. But, it's kind of stylish too.
Mm-hmm.
I guess Uncle Reach must have had a really slim cousin or something. Not Tom. Certainly not Tom. But yeah. So another big difference is another thing that I really like is when they go to the pumps. Mm-hmm. This time, I think maybe this would have been better in the first movie. I think it is an improvement. Tom pulls out a shotgun and shoots the pumps like an idiot because, you know, it's a scatter gun and it's not even the rifle from the original. It was a rifle. So you can kind of get where maybe he could have shot off that. But this is, you know, don't fire both barrels of a 12 gauge at a gas pump.
You use that for snakes.
Yes. And it starts to geyser gasoline, which hits the torch in the back of the truck. And this time a huge geyser of fire goes up. And they actually added Ben going, Tom, what the hell are you doing?
Which I'm sure is what he was thinking in the original one anyway.
Right. Yes, that's what his eyes seem to be thinking.
What are you doing, you idiot?
Tom get roasted, and they get eaten more graphically. That's one thing they managed to keep in, was the graphic devouring of Tom and Judy. And, you know, like I say, I like the Tom character. I think that Judy was perhaps... Judy could have gone, you know. Judy, I don't think we missed out with too much with old Jude.
No.
But I kind of like Tom in the remake. But anyway, and it kind of starts to play out a little bit more like the first one at this point. He gets back. There's a fight going on. There's a shootout that involves two guns this time between Ben and Cooper. They shoot each other, both shooting each other in a sort of superficial way. Obviously, the one with Ben is a little more serious. And then Barbara, instead of just looking around in that scene that I was telling you, she seemed to be taking in the madness. This time, and I love this line where she's looking at them, and they've just had a shootout, and it's like we're supposed to be on the same side. Mm-hmm. And she steps back out of the door, and she just gives this line where she goes, madness. And I love that. Mm-hmm. I love the delivery of that and the idea of her recognizing that at that moment. And then she leaves. Ben tells her to go, and she doesn't want to go. And she takes the gun that she has and leaves Ben there. And then, like in the original, Ben goes downstairs and boards up the door. But unlike in the original, Barbara continues on and finds the rednecks elsewhere. Mm-hmm. They almost shoot her. I guess they think she's a zombie. And she ends up hopping in the back of the pickup truck with her brother's dead corpse in there, who is Billy Moseley, by the way. Yeah, I can't believe I've gone through this.
You didn't mention it.
And I'm not talking about Billy, because as I said before, the first horror movie that I co-starred in was Homesick with Tommy Tolles, who was in this movie, and Billy Moseley, who was also the star of Homesick. Was in this as well as Johnny. In fact, one of the first things I said to Bill Moseley once I kind of got to know him a little bit more was the great line in this movie where they're in the cemetery at the beginning, and he goes, "They're horny, Barbara. They've been dead a long time." You know, when he's doing the whole thing, coming to get you thing. But Bill is kind of more of a cameo in this, and we see him for the last time as a smashed skull at the end. But then Barbara goes back with the rednecks to the house. And this is, again, I think that there's a power to this last little bit where you see what the rednecks are doing to the zombies. You know, there's a really haunting shot with a great piece of music underneath it where you see the three zombies strung up from a tree. Yeah. And they're shooting them with their rifles like target practice. You know, where they're you see the cruelty of these people. And it goes back to what George Romero said, where the zombies are just doing their thing, but it's the people that go out of their way to be cruel. Yeah. And I think that expanded ending, epilogue, shall we say, is It's powerful, and I think it gets the point across in a way.
Mm-hmm. And then you have to discuss Ben.
Yes, Barbara goes into the house, and they're taking a chainsaw to the door, which the basement door held yet again.
It did.
Cooper, you bastard, you were right. They chainsaw the door open, and Ben appears, and he's died from his wound that Cooper gave him, and he's a zombie. And he looks over at Barbara, and for a moment, you get this idea that he recognizes her. And as that doesn't last but a split second, because the rednecks shoot him in the head. And so again, this guy, you knew who he was in life. You saw what he became through no fault of his own. And then you see how it ends up. So again, it kind of flips the whole thing around and gives you sympathy for zombies, because all the rest of these zombies were somebody like Ben, probably. Most of them were probably good people.
But then you think about what Romero says about the people are the ones that are going out of their way to be cruel, but then the zombies are kind of, but they started off as people, obviously.
Yes. So a zombie is almost like an innocent version of a horrible person. Yeah. Or a good person, like Ben was a good guy. So you do have an affection for that zombie when you see him. And then possibly one of the greater moments is when Barbara steps back and she gets grabbed by somebody. And you think at first, shit, there's a zombie in there. And it's Cooper. And he was up in the attic. And he's wounded but has survived and clearly will probably make it. And Barbara is so incensed that Cooper, that asshole, would survive, and her partner in this, Ben, would die, that she just lifts the guy. She shoots him right in the fucking head. She murders him, and then she says, there's another one for the fire. And they throw him on the bonfire with everything else, which, I don't know, when you watch the movie, I gotta say, I kind of agreed with Barbara.
Yeah.
I mean, she does flat out murder the dude, but he was an asshole.
Yeah.
And I think even more so in this, because I don't know why, but Ben, I think, even comes across, he's tough.
Yeah, but he's a little bit more mellow in this one.
Yes.
They portrayed him a little bit more mellow.
And I'm not trying to compare it to Dwayne Jones or anything, because it's a great performance, but Dwayne Jones, it seems tougher to me.
Yes.
I don't know why. He just seems like...
Probably because he cold-cocked Barbara.
Punched her in the face. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And he told her to shut up. This Ben never told her to shut up.
That's true.
Like, this Barbara probably would have kicked him in the nuts, I think. but especially by the time they start talking. Because she's not catatonic in this movie for long. She gets over that shit.
Yes. She's like, okay, it's going down and I've got to,
And Barbara has the great idea. And actually, let me put it this way. If you combined Cooper in the remake's idea with Barbara's, you could have had an even better situation. Because what Barbara suggests, she looks out the window, she sees the zombies lumbering along, and she says they're so slow, we could just walk right past them. And Ben says, well, we have the kid. We can't carry the kid all the way in town. And she goes, well, just leave them here in the basement. We'll go and we'll bring back help.
Yeah.
And Ben blows her off. But actually, Barbara's idea works because that's how she gets away. Mm-hmm. She just walks past them. And there's a really interesting, creepy scene. Do you remember the scene where Barbara's walking away from the house and she sees the zombie that has the baby doll?
Yeah.
And it comes up to her and she pushes it away and it just keeps walking to her. And it's like she's emotional about it. Mm-hmm. There's something kind of weird about that, too, that I like. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't know why that's affecting her so much. This zombie with the baby doll. And then she shoots it. And then she goes, oh, God, and walks away. Yeah. That's there's a lot of nice little lyrical moments in this.
And the fact that she says we could just walk past them, that's something I've always thought in a lot of the movies. They're so busy arguing and freaking out, which obviously if you're in that situation, you don't know what the heck's going on. And you get all these dead people coming up at you. So, yeah, you are going to freak out and not be level-headed.
Yeah.
But if you just remained calm and just walked past them, as long as there weren't, like, thousands of them.
Yeah.
Like
that's what she says. She says, we could be careful. If we're just careful, we could make it. And we have guns.
Yeah.
And she's kind of right. Actually, she's dead on right. That's why she survived.
Yeah.
But again, it goes back to the whole thing of what Romero was talking about. If you can't get past these simple problems, I mean, the whole thing could have been so much easier. But again, once again, in the remake, they can't get past their bickering. Somebody has to be right, and nobody's going to back down.
Ego.
It's all about ego, all about not wanting to back down, if only. But then again, if they had backed down, it wouldn't have been as interesting a movie.
That's true. We wouldn't have had a movie.
That's right. So, I mean, look, I love the remake, and I was going to go into a little bit of the 30th anniversary travesty, which I did not like, but we've just about run out of time, and I would rather give that, more time.
Yeah.
So I think I would like to do something of like a series of these zombies. Maybe do Dawn and Day and Land, and maybe Diary. And I don't know about Survival. We might do Survival. That's one we do get to like 10 years in the future, because George Romero kept going. And I liked them for the most part. I think near the end, though, he
was cramming them in.
He was cramming them in, and he started to do this like CGI thing, and they were cool ideas. You could tell he had some cool ideas of how to kill zombies. But sometimes that CGI just didn't cut it.
Yeah.
It looked phony.
Yeah.
I kind of wish he had stuck with this practical effects, but practical effects are very expensive. And again,
before then, he was doing like one for a decade, basically.
Yeah, that was his idea. Yeah, do one to like encapsulate the social climate of that decade. And then, Diary, that sort of started to end. But he was working, and he was making money up till the end. George was involved with a lot of projects that never got off the ground. He had written a version of The Mummy at one point that was eventually made, by Universal, with the one with Brendan Fraser. Not that one, but he was going to do his version first. Resident Evil.
Yeah, I remember that.
It seems like a no-brainer, but George had written a whole script, and it was, and people liked it, but not the people that. That's called the shots.
That's a shame.
And it's based on his shit.
I know. Just let him do it.
Yeah. I mean, go to the master. If you want zombies, go to the master. At least on The Walking Dead, they were trying to get George to direct an episode, which would have been a big deal. But, he just wasn't digging that. So. Yeah. But anyway, that's our retrospective on Night of the Living Dead. I hope you enjoyed it. There's so many other things we could go into, but we tried to get in a lot of the original and some of the remake, because I hate not talking about the remake because I like it so much.
Yeah.
And over time, a lot of people, I don't know if it's like I like it better, but I really like it as much as the original, personally. Other people have said something similar, so I know I'm not crazy. And you like it.
I do like it. Because I like Barbara.
Yes.
In this.
Yeah. But that's our opinions on it. And we are very happy that you joined us. I want you to check out Rebecca Ivey's own channel. Tell them what it is.
I have a music page, Rebecca Ivey. I've got one music video up. I'm going to be adding stuff soon. And then I have another one. Right now it's called Rabbit Girl Fitness, where I talk about food and products and stuff that I like. So
go over, like, and subscribe to those videos.
He's in one episode of it.
I am in one episode of it.
So check him out there.
Yep. And for me, next week, the release of my collection of horror short stories, Grim Grimoire. The cover reveal was yesterday on Facebook, if you're watching this on Facebook. If not, go on over to my Facebook and you'll find out more about it. But I'm going to release it to you, all the details of how you can get it in paperback and ebook form. And we might even be able to figure out some which way I could autograph it. I don't know. We're figuring it out. But next week is when it comes out. So by the time you see us again, the book will be out. So until then, we would like to wish you a nice weekend and take care of yourselves, guys.